What if the United Kingdom had never existed? How would our lives look today if one of the most influential empires in history had never come into being? Would we speak English at all? Would the Industrial Revolution have ever happened? Would the idea of democracy have evolved differently? Let's open the door to a world where the United Kingdom never existed. The United Kingdom, officially the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, is historically the union of four countries: England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. Its foundations were laid in 1707 with the Union of England and Scotland. In 1801, Ireland joined, expanding the British Empire. Though most of Ireland gained independence in 1922, Northern Ireland remained part of the kingdom. But what truly made the UK remarkable was its power that extended far beyond the British Isles. At its height, it controlled a quarter of the world's land. It wasn't called the empire on which the sun never sets for nothing. But what if it had never been formed? In the mid-18th century, the UK became the cradle of the Industrial Revolution. Steam engines, textile mills, and revolutionary advances in coal and iron production all began in cities like Manchester, Birmingham, and Liverpool. This revolution transformed not only machines but also society, economies, and urban life. If the UK had never existed, this technological boom might have happened in Germany or France. However, it would likely have occurred later and with more limited global impact. The birth of our modern digital world could have been delayed by decades. Perhaps we would still be using steam-powered machines today. English is now the language of global communication, diplomacy, science, and the internet. But if the UK had never existed, would English have become so dominant? Probably not. In an alternate timeline, French or German might have emerged as the international lingua franca. The Americas could have been filled with French-speaking nations. This would have reshaped global knowledge sharing, business practices, and cultural production. For example, instead of Hollywood, Paris or Berlin might have become the epicenter of world cinema. The UK is a pioneer of the modern parliamentary system, starting with the Magna Carta in 1215, the restriction of monarchical power and the inclusion of public representatives in the legislative process became a model for the world. This system laid the groundwork for the democratic structure of the United States and the constitutional frameworks of many other countries. Had the UK never existed, absolutist regimes might have lasted longer. The French Revolution might have occurred later, and the founding philosophy of the United States could have been entirely different. Today, democracy itself might be more fragile and less widespread. Of course, the UK's legacy is not solely positive. Centuries of colonialism in regions such as Africa, Asia, the Caribbean, and India brought immense suffering, cultural destruction, and resource exploitation to local populations. If the UK had never existed, the developmental paths of these regions could have been vastly different. India might have industrialized earlier, Africa's internal dynamics might have remained stronger, and the Middle East might have evolved with different borders. However, another colonial power such as France or the Netherlands might have filled that void, meaning colonialism wouldn't have disappeared entirely. Still, history would have unfolded with a different rhythm. There would be no William Shakespeare, no Charles Dickens, George Orwell, the Beatles, or David Attenborough. These cultural icons would never have entered our lives. The worlds of literature, music, and cinema would look vastly different today. In particular, literature and theater would have followed a completely different trajectory without the UK. Perhaps Latin American literature would have taken center stage globally, and the voice of Gabriel García Márquez might be universally spoken. Harry Potter might have been replaced by another fantasy universe, perhaps a tale of wizards shaped under the shadow of the French Revolution. The United Kingdom's military and diplomatic impact on world history. The United Kingdom didn't just shape the world through culture and industry, it also played a decisive role in global history through its military strength and diplomatic influence. So, if this vast empire had never existed, what conflicts might humanity have avoided or experienced in an entirely different way? Let's take a closer look. In 1776, 13 American colonies revolted against the British Empire, leading to the creation of the United States. But had the United Kingdom never existed, would the American War of Independence have occurred at all? Would the modern United States have taken shape? Perhaps not. At the time, the eastern coast of North America was heavily populated by British settlers. Without the United Kingdom, these migrations would likely have been led by France or Spain. In such a case, America's language, legal system, institutions, and even its borders could have been completely different. Instead of a single United States, the continent might have splintered into multiple small nations, perhaps predominantly Spanish-speaking. In the early 1800s, Europe was shaken by Napoleon's expansionist ambitions. France came close to dominating the entire continent. But what if Britain had never existed? The United Kingdom was France's most formidable adversary in these wars. Its naval supremacy, financial resources, and diplomatic prowess in forming coalitions helped contain French expansion. The British victory under Admiral Nelson at the Battle of Trafalgar crushed Napoleon's naval power and cemented the UK's role as the guardian of European balance. Without the United Kingdom, Napoleon might have successfully dominated Europe. This would have meant a prolonged period of French hegemony throughout the 19th century. Emerging powers like Germany may never have risen. During World War II, the UK was a key force in resisting Nazi Germany. In 1940, while France fell, Britain stood alone. As London was bombed, citizens took refuge in underground tunnels, and Prime Minister Winston Churchill worked to maintain morale. Without this resistance, Germany might have fully conquered Western Europe, and conflict with the Soviet Union may have been delayed. The UK's strategic position was also crucial in drawing the United States into the war. Had Britain not existed, Nazi Germany might have established a lasting dominance over Europe. By 1945, the world could have been divided between Nazi and Soviet spheres of influence. The European Union as we know it today may never have formed. After the United Kingdom joined the United States in leading the Western Bloc. As a founding member of NATO, it provided military and diplomatic balance against the Soviet Union. Without the UK, this balance might have been weaker, leaving the US more isolated in Europe and allowing the USSR to expand its influence further. This question also opens the door to broader considerations. What would India look like? Would Pakistan and Bangladesh exist? Would Africa's borders remain the same? While British colonialism left behind legacies such as railways, legal systems, and the English language, it also led to the division of communities, exploitation of resources, and deep ethnic conflicts. Without the United Kingdom, India might never have been partitioned and could have remained a more unified empire. However, another colonial power like France or the Netherlands might have filled the vacuum. Even so, the cultural influence would have been different. Today, Hindi might be India's primary official language instead of English. The Sykes-Picot Agreement, which redrew the Middle East after World War I, was crafted by British and French diplomats. It partitioned Ottoman lands and shaped the borders of modern-day Iraq, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, and Palestine. Without the UK, these borders could have taken entirely different forms. Perhaps the State of Israel would not exist in its current location. Control of oil reserves might have fallen into different hands. Gulf nations might speak a different language, and Arab nationalism could have followed another path. The UK's global impact wasn't just political, it was also symbolic. Even today, the royal family plays a prominent role in tourism, diplomacy, and global media. Buckingham Palace remains a focal point of international attention. Without the United Kingdom, monarchies might never have become such powerful global symbols. Beyond empire, the subtle yet profound legacy of the United Kingdom. From the Industrial Revolution to colonialism, from wars to the global spread of the English language, we've explored many of the United Kingdom's far-reaching influences. In this final chapter, we'll uncover its more subtle but equally vital impacts in fields like science, sports, technology, and global governance. Because sometimes the silent influences of a nation outlast its loudest conquests. Isaac Newton's law of gravity, Charles Darwin's theory of evolution, Ada Lovelace's first computer program. The United Kingdom is filled with names that shaped the course of scientific history. If this country had never existed, modern physics and biology might have taken a very different path. Newton's mathematical principles underpin all of today's engineering and space exploration. Darwin's theory has shaped not only biology but also fields like psychology and sociology. Had these scientists never been born or lacked the freedom to develop their ideas, scientific revolutions could have been delayed by decades. Universities such as Oxford and Cambridge became global centers of scientific thought, not just in Britain but around the world. Without them, the global academic landscape would be vastly different. We might still rely on mystical or religious explanations to understand natural phenomena. Ada Lovelace, the world's first programmer, was British. So was Charles Babbage, the man who designed the first theoretical computer. And it was Tim Berners-Lee, also British, who invented the World Wide Web. Without the United Kingdom, the internet might not look anything like it does today. The development of computer science could have been delayed, and its epicenter might have been Germany or Japan instead of the US. The very language, structure, and behavior of the digital world could be completely different. Google might not exist. Facebook might have been replaced by an entirely different digital culture. Football, tennis, rugby, cricket, golf. These global sports were either born in the UK or had their first rules written there. Organizations like FIFA and UEFA were structured around the roots of football in England. If the UK had never existed, would football have become the universal sport it is today? Perhaps Argentina would have risen to dominance instead of Brazil. The rules might have been codified in France in an entirely different way. The World Cup may never have been created. Tennis might have evolved with a more modernist character, lacking traditional tournaments like Wimbledon. The Beatles, the Rolling Stones, Pink Floyd, Queen. These weren't just bands, they were cultural revolutions that defined eras. The UK's musical impact reached far beyond the West, influencing the entire globe. Without the Beatles, the evolution of modern pop music would likely have taken a different course. Instead of hip-hop, perhaps rock would have become dominant worldwide. Instead of jazz, folk music might have taken over. London might never have become the global capital of music, it could have remained a quiet provincial town. William Shakespeare turned English into a poetic language. In his absence, French or German might have become the dominant literary languages. Global cinema, literature, and theater might revolve around completely different themes, narratives, and linguistic structures. The United Kingdom is a founding member of the United Nations and holds a permanent seat on the Security Council. It plays a critical role in global diplomacy, defending human rights, legal systems, and the power of soft influence. If the UK had never existed, the unstructure might have been very different. International law might rely more on Roman law than on the Anglo-Saxon system. American influence in global affairs might have expanded more rapidly. France might have gained greater control on the diplomatic stage. British diplomatic tradition emphasizes calmness, patience, and strategic thinking in conflict resolution. In its absence, more crises might have been met with military force rather than negotiation. The world could have become a more aggressive and unstable place. Had the United Kingdom never existed, the world would not just look different, it would feel different. Perhaps there would be less colonialism, but also less scientific progress. Fewer conflicts, but also less cultural richness. More equitable borders, but slower modernization. In this alternate world, people would watch different sports, speak different languages, read different books, and listen to different music. What we call the global order today might be far more fragmented, uncertain, and delayed. In the end, the absence of the United Kingdom would leave not just a few historical gaps, but a global void in culture, science, and diplomacy. Like every nation, the UK has its dark past and controversial legacy. But one thing is clear, the United Kingdom has been one of the cornerstone forces in shaping the course of history. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel.